all of this, Austin police also tell us they plan to be at full staffing on Saturday, and we're starting to hear from other city leaders about their reaction.
This morning, we're going to talk more about that with City Council Member Mike Siegel, who represents parts of North Austin. Councilmember, welcome, and thank you for being with us.
No, thanks so much for having me.
When did you become aware of the National Guard saying that it would be standing by to respond to Austin, and how did you react to that?
Yes, well, yesterday I was informed by the city manager that this was probably going to happen. And, you know, I'm really glad that the mayor said what he said, Mayor Watson, in terms of respecting the right to protest. Because as a representative, I'm very aware that my constituents have a lot of concerns about what's been happening with ICE, you know, in immigration enforcement. We've seen in recent weeks, you know, U.S. citizens and legal U.S. residents being deported, sometimes to countries where they have no access to legal representation. We've seen the mayor of Newark arrested. We've seen a member of Congress indicted. They even assaulted and arrested one of the leading labor representatives in the country in Los Angeles. And so people are concerned about the role of this federal immigration enforcement program, and really how there seems to be a disregard for fundamental civil rights, even disobeying court orders. We've had multiple federal judges tell ICE, you shouldn't have deported somebody, they should be brought back, and those orders have been ignored. So I'm really cognizant that there's some really fundamental concerns about democracy and unfortunately rising authoritarianism in this country, and that's why I think the people of Austin are in the streets.
Sticking with the issue here, we know there's been a lot of conversations about how the protests and the demonstrations themselves are being handled, but when it comes to immigration, we've seen several local leaders in the Central Texas area release proclamations and statements this week. Can we expect to see anything on the issue of immigration enforcement from Austin city leaders?
Well, certainly, you know, we celebrate Austin being a welcoming city, right? A city that has been very much enriched by our immigrant community. We have people from around the world who live here, who work here, who start businesses here, who send their kids to school here, and they're a part of our community. And the idea that we're going to demonize a whole swath of our community as being unsafe or violent really is something that Austinites stand against. And so I join with my colleagues in saying that, you know, sure, there might be some criminal issues over here, some immigration enforcement issues here, but we shouldn't demonize an entire community, and we definitely shouldn't be supporting programs that basically put people at risk. And that's my concern about the combination of ICE and also the calling in of the National Guard, that we're threatening the right to protest, that we're basically frightening people and encouraging them to go underground for fear of what the federal government might do.
So this Saturday, we know that police here in the community are saying they're going to have more staffing to prepare for what may be some additional demonstrations throughout Austin. There have been 13 arrests that happened on Monday. So what's your message to people out there who do plan to join in whatever protest or demonstration that might happen this weekend?
Well, this is our fundamental First Amendment right. You know, it's in the Bill of Rights of the United States Constitution, the right to protest, to air our grievances. And I think that's what the people of Austin are largely doing. I'm concerned about the call-up of the National Guard because soldiers are not trained as police, right? They're not from this community by and large. These are often young people who would like to pursue a career in the military services, and they were never expecting to be called in to police their own fellow citizens. And so I hope that the governor will use his utmost discretion to avoid basically releasing soldiers onto the streets of Austin and San Antonio and other cities, because our police department can handle this. I mean, as you shared, you know, the offenses that people were charged on, these are pretty ordinary property crimes that police departments are very well equipped to handle. And so I want to make sure we avoid escalating the situation as much as possible.
I do want to ask you, we heard from the police chief yesterday that some of the arrests had to do with injuries to officers. And, you know, I think even in that statement from the mayor saying, you know, efforts to hurt police are wrong. So any reaction there to some of those, the push to make sure our officers who are engaging are not hurt as well? Any reaction there?
No, that's absolutely fair. And I'm really happy to work with Chief Davis to make sure that we both protect officers and protect the public who are exercising the First Amendment rights. Unfortunately, whenever you have large demonstrations, there will always be a few rogue actors who show up and don't respect our community norms. But by and large, I think the people that are showing up at these protests are, you know, older retired people who care about the U.S. Constitution, you know, maybe people who are relatives of immigrants who just want to work and have a good life here in Texas, people from the community who want to show up and stand up for their neighbors who are under attack. And so I think just to have that mentality that this is all of us who are in the streets right now. There's thousands of people from all walks of life who are expressing their dissent, their opposition to these policies, and that should be protected.
Well, Council Member Mike Siegel, we appreciate you taking the time as much as you did this morning to talk with us about this, and of course we'll try to follow up with you what should come this weekend. So thanks again.
Well, thank you so much for your coverage. Appreciate it.
We want to